Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us here in the Solstice Theatre in Navan. I am delighted to be opening our fourth in our series of international webinar series in partnership with the WHO. I'm equally delighted that today's anniversary falls on International Women's Day, so I give a warm welcome to every woman in the world today. It's maybe by coincidence or design that we have an all-female panel today, so we're delighted with that as well. Welcome to all of our international delegates who are joining us online. And today's theme is probably one of the most important domains within the WHO framework, certainly in terms of what we've heard over the last 12 years. Communication and information is of significant importance, no matter what age you are. And actually, when we were doing consultation in the very, very start of this process, it was one of the themes that came really to the fore. Because I remember one person, older person, saying to me one time, I would go to everything if I could get to it and if I knew about it. So we always focused on transport and information and communication cohesively, particularly in rural areas. So I'm really excited in terms of the panellists that we have today and what we have to hear. I'm joined by my colleague and Regional Age-Friendly Programme Manager for the East, Louise Edmonds, who's going to give us a great overview on digital experiences, telehealth, telecare, robotics, domotics, and all of those things that are happening in that field, which is a very active area and never been more important since the experience of the pandemic in the last 2 years. I'm delighted also to have our colleague Anna McHugh from An Post, and one of the things that we're very proud of in this country over the last 2 years is a lot of the organisations that really put on the green jersey and supported people in the pandemic, and An Post was certainly one of them. So Anna, we're really delighted to have you here today to talk about the theme of information and communication. Also, we have Sylvia McCarthy, Head of Communications, and Sylvia has been, I suppose, responsible for, across the shared service, providing information and communication within the service, but also ensuring that we have everything implemented for our older people and our older people's councils. And whilst we'll be hearing from Orla Carmody today, who's our Principal Advisor, we're going to be taking questions and answer from Sylvia in terms of practical initiatives that have been implemented and what we can feed back. So before we start, just a few housekeeping things in terms of questions. If you want to put in your questions, please do through Slido. You'll see the link on the slide deck and the frame there. And also, if you are tweeting, you can follow us on Age-Friendly IRL at Age-Friendly IRL. But please try to use the hashtags Policy to Practice and International Webinar 4 if you can. It'd be a great way of getting the message across. And of course, as always, we'll circulate everything and it'll be live on our websites and you can watch the webinar back. But before we start, our first welcome address, and I'm really delighted that our welcome address is from Barbara Delaney. Barbara is the National Director for Retail and Consumer Services within Ireland's Communication Regulator, or ComReg as it is known across this country. And being part of the Commission, which is responsible for legislation, regulation, excuse me, it's a really important role. And I think we've always had a relationship with all of the bodies that play a role in providing services for older people. But in the last 2 years, that relationship with ComReg has been really important, because we heard from older people who were disproportionately affected by the pandemic, in as much as not being able to, I suppose, get out and about and access services. So services that were coming into the home were really important. And we were able to do much consultation between our national network of older people's councils and ComReg and have implemented change. So it's really important that we were given that opportunity to communicate and be able to talk to them and see where we needed to make small changes that could improve the connectivity for older people. So it's very fitting that our address this morning, our welcome address, is from Barbara Delaney. So welcome, Barbara.
Thank you, Catherine. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm honoured and delighted to deliver this welcome address on International Women's Day at Age-Friendly Ireland's webinar, Information and Communication. My name is Barbara Delaney and I'm the Director of Retail and Consumer Services at the Commission for Communications Regulation. That's ComReg for short. ComReg is the regulator in Ireland for electronic communications and postal services. as a public body, Comreg must also ensure that its services are accessible and inclusive. I want to start by commending Age Friendly Ireland on its work in coordinating the National Age Friendly Cities and Counties programme and for its very successful policy to implementation approach. Comreg's work with Age Friendly Ireland and the Older Persons Council has been very fruitful and informative to date, and we are looking forward to building on that into the future. It is not only important to Comreg that stakeholders, including older people, are included in consultation processes on policy matters, but also that our engagement programme delivers timely, useful and accessible information, and that tools are made available to all members of society so that they can be kept informed and make good choices about communication services. Our consumer advisory participants, including Age Friendly Ireland, play a significant role here. Now, more specifically to today's topic, information and communication. I think it's fair to say that over the past 2 years, our reliance on communications has significantly increased, facilitated by mobile, fixed, broadband and postal services. Such services have helped us to keep all, and especially older people, connected with family and friends. Communications have also allowed us to do business through purchasing of goods and services online, and this is supported by sending and delivery of goods when it may have been difficult to go shopping in person. Ms McHugh from An Post will talk later more about postal services. As far as electronic communication services are concerned, access to adequate electronic communications facilities is increasingly seen as a fundamental need for everyone and an essential facility to enable access in an increasingly wide range of essential services and for social and economic inclusion. The development of networks and the adoption of new technologies have enabled people to connect in many new ways. Consumers' reliance on electronic communications to carry out various social and economic related activities has accelerated with the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, and with the growth of remote working and greater use of video calling applications. In December 2020, 75% of online users reported that the reliability of internet connection had become more important in the last year. Online activities, including remote working, are also becoming important for enterprise, for digital services such as e-government, e-learning and the cloud storage are becoming increasingly popular. However, the pattern of network rollout across the country, as well as varying levels of technology adoption across demographics, mean that consumers' experiences of the sector are not uniform. In addition to delivering connectivity levels between urban and rural areas, the take-up of electronic communications also varies across demographic groups. These factors, among others, influence consumers' access to telecom goods and services, as well as consumer confidence to choose and use these services. Comreg has a role to protect consumers' rights and prevent operators from exploiting consumers in telecoms markets. From a consumer's perspective, Comreg's strategy seeks to ensure that consumers can choose and use communication services with confidence. Comreg expects that consumers have choice of service providers, at least one provider made available. Vulnerable and disabled end users should be protected. The sign-up process should be transparent and simple, but yet secure. Consumers should be able to switch without service disruption. Consumers should get the service that they sign up for, and consumers should understand their bill and be billed correctly. Consumer access to customer care and redress is fundamental. A cornerstone of all of these protections is consumers being able to ensure that they get information so that they can carry out their daily lives and their interactions with their service providers in a confident and informed manner. If there is lack of information or it is not communicated effectively, consumers are disadvantaged and they will not get the full benefit of the services made available to them. This is particularly important when terminology and technology are rapidly changing, and this is the case with electronic communications. Comreg is committed to providing trusted advice and support to ensure consumers can make informed decisions. We do this through the use of easy to understand language in our engagement and with consumers and the public. We describe the consumer navigation of communications markets as the consumer journey. At each stage of the journey, we seek to ensure that all consumers are adequately informed of their rights and they are equipped with the necessary information to make informed decisions. There are a number of useful information sources available to consumers when making these purchasing decisions. Two sources are the information provided by service providers and secondly, information provided by Comreg. Comreg leverages its consumer Comreg Connects brand for its engagement with consumers. We aim to connect with consumers with the information and resources that they need to assist them when making choices. Our communication and engagement activities include direct contact with individual consumers by phone, by email, through outreach events, the provision of information on our website and social media, and indirect engagement through the media. However, this is not a one-way communication. We must listen and engage and refine and tailor our information so that it can provide the most benefit to our audiences. Comreg interactions with age-friendly and older people's councils have been extremely useful in assisting us to tailor important information and provide it to consumers, including older people. An example of this is the recent engagement on scam calls, where this leaflet was produced and disseminated through Age Friendly Ireland. In addition to information available to consumers on our website, we offer a variety of consumer tools. For example, the independent coverage checker for mobile at coveragemap.comreg.ie, a comparison tool which allows you to compare prices and other aspects of communication products, and a premium rate service checker at servicechecker.comreg.ie. We intend to recommence participating at outreach events and meet consumers more and more face-to-face through this year. In the meantime, we do intend to host webinars and participate in webinars such like this that will address consumer topics of interest. In summary, we are all aware of the importance of communications in our daily lives. For older people, this can not only provide essential communications with family and friends, but also assist overcoming loneliness and ensure social inclusion. The communication services themselves are important, but information about those services is equally important too, so that the full benefit is derived. I congratulate Age Friendly Ireland in highlighting this topic and hope that this webinar will provide an impetus for everyone to reflect and see how we can all improve our interactions, communications and engagement and supports for older people. I look forward now to the further presentations today. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you, Barbara, for that wonderful opening address. And there was a couple of things that Barbara touched on, particularly the communication and the channel that has opened up now between Comreg and our national network of older people's councils. Likewise, the older people's councils provide that collective voice on behalf of a range and diverse range of older people across the country. As we know, older people are not an homogenous group, and therefore we need to make sure that all needs are met. So Barbara has touched on a number of outcomes and outputs from those conversations to date, and which have been really, really successful, and we want that to continue. A couple of other things that Barbara talked about was the connectivity, things like where our libraries are going to be hubs, they're going to be BCBs, and there are going to be opportunities for older people to get back into towns and start to use, if we're looking at remote working and all of those things, a lot more rural activity. And this is very much in keeping with this government's Town Centre First programme and policy, which has just been launched, and we want to see more of that. And when we know, again, Barbara touched on it, when people are bringing footfall into the town, that is beneficial for everybody of all ages, but it gives older people that connectivity, that social dividend, which improves the overall societal determinants of health. And I think there's a really a real merit in the promotion of that and making sure that we have the infrastructure to support that. So in summary, we are delighted to be working with Comreg and look forward to continuing to do so. Our next speaker, I'm delighted to welcome Anna McHugh. Anna is the Head of Corporate Communications from An Post. As I said earlier, An Post have been one of the Irish organisations that were at the helm of supporting people throughout the pandemic. It was really, really important that everybody came together and looked at elements of their services that could be tailored, whether it was that they could provide an intervention or whether they needed to go online or what could they do. And An Post very, very rapidly brought in a number of changes. I know, Anna, that they provided proxy at the counter for people to come and collect payments and things like that. But the human stories that we heard and the anecdotal evidence of people telling us that the postman would come to the window, he'd knock on the door or wait till somebody came to make sure, doing that daily check-in, maybe bringing somebody a newspaper, picking up their medication. The response was overwhelming and quite emotional actually for people that, the postmen and postwomen of this country provided that real connectivity, as did many other volunteers and people. But there were just one key element that were highlighted to us by older people. So we know as well, Anna, that we've had a long relationship with An Post and through our awards ceremony every year, and I suppose what we need to learn now is what has worked well, and what we're really excited about today is where An Post have learned from the pandemic, looking at the orientation of services and where we go from here. So I welcome now Anna McHugh.
Thank you. Really delighted to be with you here today to tell you a little bit more about An Post, about the journey we're on, and what we've done already to encourage and to support older people right across our community and our postal communities, and what we're planning to do in the future. It's so good to be coming out of the pandemic and returning to some sort of normal living, and it's been a real adventure for us and for all of our staff over the last 2 years. Our industry and our business has been changing rapidly, and right up until the pandemic hit, we come through a big phase of transformation where our business is moving away from traditional letters into more e-commerce parcels, and moving a little bit away as well from cash into financial services. But that said, we're very, very conscious and proud of our strong roots and the importance of maintaining choice for customers of all needs and requirements and ages. So COVID hit, and we very quickly and immediately took a decision to put our customers first. We suspended a lot of our background work that we had planned on new projects and the like, to serve the communities and to serve the economy, and to help the government with that state of emergency, and really to keep supply lines open. And we were very proud that our postmasters and our post offices remained open throughout the pandemic, when a lot of other financial institutions and other bodies shut their doors. But we remained open. At times it was difficult. We had to curtail hours of opening. We had to put in, obviously a lot of new rules and regulations to keep our customers and our staff safe. But we did that. It became our priority, and we're very pleased to have provided that service that was so essential, that continuity right throughout the pandemic. So a couple of things, I suppose, in particular that we focused on over the last 2 years. Take, for example, our postal delivery staff. They have always checked in with older people or vulnerable people or people living alone. There's no doubt about that. It mightn't actually be on anybody's job description officially, but we know that our people do it, and do it willingly, to help people, maybe to collect things for them, or to collect post from them, or just to call in to say hello, and pass the time of day with customers. During the pandemic, we formalised that a little bit more, and our staff made a particular effort to call into people, even in urban areas, just to check up on them. But we also introduced a great mix of sort of the online digital and the physical, in that we put in place a facility where if there was people living abroad, we'll say, or in another part of the country, and they were a little worried maybe about an older person living alone or living in an isolated area, they could actually request a specific check-in for that person. And whether there was mail for them or not, the local delivery person would get that information and make a point of calling by. And that was very popular. We had many, many thousands of requests for us to do that right throughout the pandemic. And we know that it was very much appreciated both by the people who originated it and the customers themselves. So we made an absolute point of that. Obviously, we were delivering literature from the HSE and from government to, provide trusted sources of information for customers, for families, and for everybody. But we maintained our deliveries. It meant a lot of changes as well for our staff, because they started working in smaller groups. And rather than all being in delivery depots at the same time and leaving on their routes and with their mail at the same time, their start times were staggered so as to reduce the risk of infection. So they had to make a lot of adjustments in their lives. And of course, they all had the same pressures and challenges as everyone else in minding families and their own health and trying to organise their own lives. But working together and closely with our trade unions, we got through that. Another thing we introduced during the pandemic was free post in and out of nursing homes and care homes. And we've recently announced that that's something that's here to stay permanently. We're putting that in place now as a permanent facility because it meant so much to people. To families to be able to keep in touch with people who were in care homes or nursing homes and vice versa. And it also encouraged a whole new level of interaction between local schools and younger people and local groups and people living in care homes or nursing homes. And that had a real impact, that's there for the long term. Our purpose in An Post is to act for the common good and to improve the quality of life now and for generations to come. So no matter what we're doing, no matter what product we're looking at, no matter what service we're reviewing, or any action we take, we look to our purpose to guide us. And we're also guided by the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which provide very clear direction for the postal industry in how we can be truly sustainable. And a really important part of sustainability is that support for communities. And whether it's providing secure addresses, as we do for people who are homeless or in temporary accommodation, or supporting the likes of adult and family literacy for people of all ages, or whether it's ensuring that we have a post office network, for example, that is sustainable, and that our products and services are written in plain English, or that we're delivering books to children who wouldn't otherwise have books in their lives. All of these things come together to make for a truly sustainable business, as well as being decent, proper employers, and as well as being really careful about how we buy and source goods. And of course, climate action, where we're moving into full electric van fleets around the country and really working to reduce our carbon output rapidly. So all of those pieces have to work together. But at the centre of it all is the customer. And there is no doubt that in recent years we've taken a hard look at ourselves, and we're very conscious that we have to, keep encouraging and keep connecting with younger people, because they are the long-term future. We want to be there throughout everybody's life. We don't want to be seen as a company just for one age segment. We have to ensure that we have new customers coming on board all of the time, but also ensuring that we maintain our services and keep them relevant for people of all ages. And we've certainly learned that one shouldn't assume that digital services aren't for older people, because if anything, the pandemic forced a lot of people online to discover, for example, the handiness and the joy at times of shopping online. But it becomes, I suppose, a little bit more complex in terms of ensuring your services are accessible and meaningful and relevant for all ages. Another thing we did during the pandemic was the free postcards that we provided, postage paid, to every house in the country for people to keep in touch and to make that human connection. We actually did that twice, in 2020 and in 2021. And that was definitely very, very popular and encouraged, a new interest in letter writing, in keeping in touch through the written word. And a lot of people used them to decorate, to keep in touch with grandparents or grandchildren. But they also went all over the world. And, it was great to see how people reacted and really got involved with those. We also provide and continue to provide free newspaper delivery to people who are older or living alone. And again, that's proved really popular. They arrange the purchase of the newspaper, and we will deliver it for free. And we think that's again ongoing and a really important service, and has proved very, very popular. Over the years, there's a number of initiatives that we've been involved in, very specifically for older people. And I'll just outline one of them, which was and is called Logon Learn. And this was a transition year programme. So many of our second level students, when they're around the age of 16 or so, they partake in a transition year. So it's a year where they're not working within the curriculum towards state exams. And it's between they finish the first part of that junior cycle of examination before they go to the 2-year cycle for their final year examination. And it's all about, self-development, maturity, and giving them an opportunity to develop and to experience things outside of the strict subject curriculums. And about 15 years ago, we got involved with Intel and Microsoft in a module called Logon Learn. And this involved students in their computer class linking in with local active age groups in their town, in their locality. So they had to go out, engage with them, and invite older people to come in and learn basic computer skills on a one-to-one basis. So the teenagers were teaching the older people in a gentle way. So it wasn't something that maybe older people had to keep up with the class, because that isn't for everybody. But on a gentle one-to-one basis, and they could, go at whatever pace suited them. And we did it as a pilot scheme, and it just took off around the country. It became the #1 most popular transition year module. It would run over about 8 weeks. And at the end of that period, all the people involved would get a certificate, and they'd have a cup of tea and celebrate their success. So it would enable older people maybe to learn about searching for items online, sending an email, using Google, for example, to look up flights or look up genealogy or whatever it might be. So it was really useful to older people. But let me tell you how useful it was to the younger people, because they had that bridge into an older generation, and there was amazing friendships forged and maintained, and great links then between the teenage groups in schools and their local active age groups. And one thing that teachers told us about that they were really pleased about was, you'll have your A students and your high performers who'll always do really well. But this program really worked for maybe some of the kids who, weren't superly academically going to achieve huge things academically, but they had great social skills, and it built their confidence. Even some of the children who maybe would have been maybe a bit disruptive or not interested perhaps in a lot of the academic subjects, they took to this like ducks to water. And that linkage and that responsibility really worked for them, enabling them to be the teacher. And many of those young people became the stars of that module. And the schools then began to adapt it and make it their own. So we provided them with the initial programme and supported them with helping to advertise it locally. But they then took it on, adapted it, and all made it their own. And it still exists today, absolutely flourishing for transition years. But it has forged thousands of friendships. And important as well for younger people, who many of which wouldn't always have a close link with older people, or we'll say with grandparents who may live in another country at a distance and wouldn't be part of their everyday lives. So that was really important, and lots of learnings from that for everybody that was involved. So we're very proud of that, and as I said, it's still flourishing. We have another initiative underway at the moment in Carlow and Kilkenny with the Gardaí, whereby, if they have particular community alerts or concerns, or they're looking for particular, maybe, for some extra help in keeping an eye in isolated rural areas to keep people safe, they will link in with the local delivery fleet in An Post and give them some specific, details of things that they're looking out for. Or maybe they're just looking for us to keep an eye on local activity. Something we would do anyway. We'll say if we saw, strange cars or anything unusual in isolated areas or around the homes of older people who are living alone. And our staff have been very willing and really done great work in that pilot scheme. And we're hoping that that'll be extended further. I suppose it's another example of aspects of the community all working together, keeping their eyes and ears open and keeping people safe. Because we're very conscious, we're one of the most trusted, reputable companies in Ireland consistently. And our staff are of their own communities and are hugely trusted. And they take that responsibility very, very, very importantly, very seriously. They're also all security checked. Nobody gets to work for An Post even on a temporary basis without being fully security checked. So that's an important element within that community work as well. We'd also ensure that our frontline staff in post offices have training and ongoing information available to them about, we'll say, dealing with customers who might have early dementia or other difficulties. And again, we're very discreet and patient in that regard. And it's something, again, that our frontline staff do take very seriously. We're also conscious that, as we move into a more digital world, we'll say with banking and financial services, for example, we do offer, obviously, and more online services. But we also have our 900 plus strong post office network, with most of the offices are run by independent contractors, postmasters and postmistresses. And we ensure that there's nothing online that you can't get advice about or be helped with or do in a local post office. So between those two, we also check all of our literature to ensure that it's in plain English and that it's as accessible and readable for everybody. And we're very conscious as well of not having a bias. We really try in our advertising towards any one group. As I said, we obviously have to encourage new customers, younger customers all the time to keep our business going and to expand our business. But we're very conscious of our obligations and the loyalty of our older customers, to our business as it expands out and does change, as I said. The other thing we're very conscious of as well is, and we get a lot of inputs, is into our national stamp programme. And in general, people really do appreciate and the stamps that we produce on behalf of the people of Ireland. We work about 2 years in advance with topics because both topics and designs have to be approved by Cabinet. A lot of people don't realise that. That's why it takes a while. We take in suggestions. At the moment, we're taking in suggestions for the 2024 programme. and they'll be shortlisted, approved by government, and then we'll start commissioning the designs. So stamp suggestions at unpost.ie, or drop a letter, free post, to the GPO in O'Connell Street, Dublin 1, to stamp suggestions. We're always interested to hear what you'd like to see on the nation's stamps. Sometimes, people aren't, they mightn't like all of our stamps, but we're always delighted to get feedback from people as well. And that's an important thing. And we're always conscious as well that in depicting people, I'm just thinking of our Christmas stamps from last year, where we had various family setups, that we display older people, families, individuals, people of all nationalities on our stamps, because diversity and inclusion is so important to us. And as leaders in that world, and with the sort of reach that we have, it's important that that we're always conscious of that and don't lose sight of it. So we have a lot going on in that regard, as I said, as our business is constantly changing. But we're always open to feedback and to doing things better. And our commitment to communities, urban and rural, I think we've demonstrated it throughout COVID. And we're conscious that, it's our absolute determination to maintain those connections and to strengthen them even further, even as we move out of the pandemic, because that's what life's all about. And as I said, improving the quality of life now and for generations to come. That's what On Post is about. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. What a fantastic overview of all the services that On Post have delivered and continue to deliver in this country on behalf of everybody of all ages, but particularly those that were supportive to older people. There's a couple of things coming through on the webinar chat, and I've been linking in, and we're hearing just words of thanks for On Post from people to say thank you for everything you did in the pandemic. So I know that you'll be delighted as a member of the senior management team to take that back to your colleagues, and that it goes down to the grassroots, that there is a level of appreciation there from people in Ireland. So I think that's really, really great to see that coming through. Just a couple of things, I suppose, that struck me there. The value of the intergenerational learning programmes. Over the last 12 years, we've supported hundreds, maybe thousands of intergenerational programmes. And I know that one of the things you drew on was the dividend that is for the child, particularly a child that maybe doesn't have a strong older mentoring role in their lives, or maybe has lost their grandparents. It's really, really important that those intergenerational programmes are really, really, I suppose, harnessed and sustained, because there's a merit in it. Multi-generational, particularly the intergenerational with the old and the young. And I'm delighted that On Post are leading out on that Logon Learn. And just, I suppose, to highlight as well, Age Friendly Ireland work with the WHO, or obviously in partnership with the WHO on the UN Decade of Healthy Ageing, which are aligned to the SDGs. So we're delighted that as well. It's just another collaboration between ourselves and On Post, so I'm delighted with that. So thank you very much, Anna, and look forward to the questions coming through that are all ready to come in through on Slido, and we'll do that at the end. So our next speaker, and unfortunately Orla couldn't be with us today in person. Orla Carmody Duffy is our Principal Advisor in Age Friendly Business. She has led out on the training programme to thousands of businesses across the country. And last year we launched a number of national change, which we're rolling them out through their outlets. And Orla is going to speak to us today about communication, and also a little bit about age-related stereotypes and how we need to combat that, and particularly that we don't need to take a retrograde step in terms of how older people are portrayed in the media. Orla is a former journalist. She's a senior consultant in communications with an eclectic mix of skills and her background. She's been on the board of RTE and has a number of strings to her bow, which makes her, I suppose, a very informed voice in terms of her delivery today. So unfortunately, as I say, she couldn't join us in person today, but delighted that Sylvia will be here to talk about some of the initiatives and the programmes that Orla's talking about and how they were implemented, and take any questions and answers. So welcome to Orla.
Growing old is interesting. We live in a great age when people are living longer than we have ever seen before on this planet. Older people are healthier. In many cases, they enjoy a really good standard of life. They contribute more to their communities, their families, their businesses, to politics and public life. Core to the age-friendly movement in Ireland is the way we communicate this message to society and share the information that demonstrates clearly that Ireland is working really hard to become a great place in which to grow old. This statement informs everything we do in the age-friendly movement. If you design for the young, you exclude the old, but if you design for the old, you include everyone. What does that really mean in practice? Well, if you put in a handrail or a ramp into your building or your business, well, isn't that very helpful for an older person? But it's also very useful to a young person pushing a buggy, a young parent, or indeed the young man who broke his leg playing football last Saturday and is now getting around on crutches. Being age-friendly is being fully inclusive in the best sense of the word. Information is what we share. Communication is the act of transferring information from one place or person to another. So information and communication are not the same thing. And we have a remit to get both right to the best of our ability. Our work starts and ends with older people themselves. It behoves us never to assume we know what they want and to prescribe accordingly, but to ask them what they want, to consult with them at every stage of the journey, so that we are led and directed by their voices to find all the solutions that will make our towns, our cities, our villages, our communities as age-friendly as we can possibly make them. As we age, there are many factors that lead to breakdown in communications. We experience many changes as part of the natural aging process, which may affect our capacity to receive and exchange information. We're looking at sensory issues, physical issues, emotional issues, literacy issues, and part of our communication and information programme is to make the wider community aware of these things. During COVID, businesses reported back to us that older people who came to visit might say to them, "This is the only conversation I've had today." And those businesses worked at being patient, being understanding, listening more clearly, and taking time and supporting the decisions that the older person was making in that purchase. How people feel in older age has changed enormously in recent times because of the health and activity and contribution factors we mentioned before. So you might say 80 is the new 60 and 60 is the new 40. But again, what does that mean in practice? Well, we meet older people who are playing golf 3 times a week, approaching age 90. People who are marshalling park runs and leading Girl Guide troops in their 70s and 80s. People who live rich, full and interesting lives, and whose greatest concern is that they might be dismissed or treated as less relevant just because they have aged. Stereotyping is a serious issue. In media, news reports, advertising, online feeds, older people tell us that they are either invisible or stereotyped as frail and infirm. And we have to ask, why does this happen? Well, the advertising and marketing industries are dominated by segmentation. So they're very well aware of the exact products a 25-year-old buys, a 35-year-old buys, and a 45-year-old. But when it comes to 60, they seem to homogenise the whole of the older age group. So between 60 and 90, advertisers will assume you're buying the same products and services, when in fact, of course, we know you're not. Older people need to be shown as they live their lives today, not as they might have lived 20 or 30 years ago. So that's out and about, shopping, playing sports, travelling. At Age Friendly Ireland, we strive to depict older people in a wide variety of settings and groupings, living active, full lives. And that's not to negate the fact that, of course, some older people have health and mobility issues, but many of them do not, and we need to start showing that diversity in our imagery. And we also need to show older people in different family groupings, leading different lifestyles, a more accurate reflection of life today. So how do we know so much about how older people live today? Well, the eyes and ears on the ground of the Age Friendly Ireland movement are our older persons councils. In every one of our 31 local authority areas in Ireland, we have a strong and vibrant older persons council made up of about 12 men and women of various backgrounds and stages of their lives who listen, who talk, who consult, who ask the questions and report all of that back to us so that we are not assuming we know what they want in life. We are asking and we are hearing. Have a listen now to their own words about their own lives and how they feel about how they may be depicted in our news media.
Older people are shown, when they are shown, it is always in a caricature format.
They show people wobbling along on a stick with Nora Batty's stockings on and dreadful clothes. Most of us don't dress like that at all. And I wouldn't clean the house in what they have on the television.
There's an ad on TV at the moment. It shows an older lady, presumably going to live with her son.
She covers her eyes up, and then when they open the door, everything she had in the older house in her own home had been moved to the son's house.
And it was so annoying to see a person depicted in that way.
Most of us are very with it, and we change our decorations in our homes quite often. So that is very condescending, if that's the word.
Mostly we're vibrant, interested, and we certainly would not have that horrible wallpaper.
I don't know where the marketing people or whoever got this idea from, but it's totally, totally wrong.
Instead of using actors to portray us, and in a bad way they portray us, why not ask older people? There's plenty of older people, aged from 60 to 100, who are quite capable of doing things like that.
I'm well able to think for myself. So just back off of that line of thinking all the time that older people can't think for themselves or make decisions for themselves.
We might be slow, but we're well able to keep up with everything. And looking round at all the older people that we know, there is so much going on and so much voluntary work and etc., all done by older people.
You know, if they showed a lot more of that instead of showing us the other way, I mean, we're doing Meals on Wheels, we're doing all sorts of other things here in the community.
I hate the word elderly. It really gives me the shivers because I feel it's like it's a crumpled word. It's wrinkled, it's disabled, it's miserable, and we're not miserable.
I marshal weekly at my local park run, and I'm in my 80s and I've just completed my 80th park run marshalling. And this is something that's never portrayed in the media for older people and how we can contribute to society.
Why do people over 60 be seen as a homogenous group? Because they're not. There's a huge difference in a 30 age span.
I want to know, when does the elderly word kick in?
I like the word older, whether it's older person or older generation, because it's a nice, strong word.
I play golf 3 times a week, and recently I was playing with 2 of the men from the club, and I heard one saying to the other, "That little old lady has a great swing." And I thought, now, will I say something? But I didn't. So at the end of the 18 holes, I proved to them that the little old lady wasn't that bad at all because I took their money off them.
I don't want to be protected because I am wise. I have all the years of wisdom. So I'm not going to do anything stupid. So I don't need somebody to cocoon me.
And we would like the young people to depict us in a different way and maybe show us as intelligent human beings rather than little old ladies or whatever.
I'd like to be seen buying a new car. A friend of mine bought a red one. I'd like to have the courage to buy a red one. So if there's any car dealers out there who are looking for somebody to represent older people, I'd be all for it. I'd love it, but my car must be red.
So there you have it, the words of some of the members of our older persons councils, and they don't pull any punches, they tell it like it is. I particularly liked the comment about the word elderly sounding like a bent over, wrinkled word, where the word older sounds like an upright, strong word. Wasn't that an interesting comment? And also saying we may have slowed up a little, but our knowledge and experience is still there. And this is vital in our task in Age Friendly Ireland, to share that our older people have a lot of knowledge and experience to offer, regardless of their age. And another comment, we don't want to be dusted down and put in the corner. And that is the reference made earlier about invisibility, that where we do show older people in advertising and media, it sometimes is in a stereotypical way, or sometimes we just don't show older people at all. It's as if they no longer buy products and services when they get to a particular age. And here's a comment that says the word vulnerable is triggering. And yes, we did hear a lot of those words in use throughout COVID. But if you look at the last 4 letters, it spells able. Yes, we're not as fast in certain things as we used to be, but we're still so well able in many areas. One of our tasks has been to engage with the advertising industry in Ireland to see if we can affect change. We presented to a number of advertising industry large federations with hundreds of people on our webinars, and we also offered a training programme to creatives in the advertising industry so that they bring correct thinking to the table, so that they bring a greater awareness of the impact and the power of the older consumer and the older person in general to all advertising and creative work at the starting point, when it has just been initiated, rather than when it's too late, when it appears on our screens. We're now reaching out to the broadcast organisations, the local radio network, and many other organisations to look at this aspect of how we depict older people. Isn't it interesting to read here that 82% of those over the age of 55 say their favourite retail brand no longer understands them or what they need. So somebody might have been purchasing a brand their whole life and they no longer see themselves depicted in that advertising and they feel invisible. And that may indeed impact on their loyalty to that brand. Or indeed, we see here that those actually working in the advertising, media and PR industries will themselves admit that the industry has become quite ageist and this needs to change. So yes, language is so important. And during the pandemic, we heard the media use words like aged, infirm, elderly, as we've touched on earlier, old age pensioners, and so on. We advocate the use of the word older. If you're 25, you're older than somebody who's 20. If you're 45, you're older than somebody who is 40. There is nothing offensive about it. The word older refers to anybody who is older than anybody else, and it is very acceptable, or so our older persons councils tell us. Our communications guide goes into all of this in detail. We have a new one currently being developed in collaboration with a number of other organisations working in this space. We also need to look at the move to go digital and that no older person gets left behind on the digital journey. Later in this webinar, Louise will tell you more about the Acorn pilot project, which was creating a device specially for use by older people to make it easy and quick to get online. In our library services, we have a Digital Ambassadors programme with Libraries Ireland, and that's to put books online. And throughout COVID, we saw a great uptake where older people were able to access their favourite reading materials online. We also supported our older persons councils to continue meeting via Zoom and other online platforms so that they could continue their meetings and the great work that they do. We estimate that about 20% of the older age category, that's say the 80 plus category, will never go digital and will never go online. But that means 80% of them are well capable of going online and very interested in going online. And it may have been one of the benefits or the upsides of COVID, if you like to present it that way, that many of them did actually go online with the support of the older persons councils, with the support of the libraries, and with the support of some technology companies who gave smartphones and devices to older people throughout that period. We also offered communications training to the older persons councils throughout COVID, which many of them took up, and indeed media training. And they made very valuable and valid contributions to our national and local radio network, sharing the experience of what life was like at the front line for older people throughout the lockdown period. This lovely colourful slide is Donegal's Ceol na Céile, an intergenerational choir which kept their work going throughout COVID on one of these online platforms. And amazing work was done. They connected, they had the joy of music to keep them going during that dark period, with the support, of course, of the 31 programme managers, age-friendly programme managers throughout the country. We also brought our older persons councils on board when we consulted with various major organisations who were at the forefront throughout COVID, communication at its very best, if you like. And we looked at certain issues that arose during COVID, coming up with solutions in consultation with the older people. So, for example, here, Air, a telecoms company within Ireland, created a special support line for older people to access if they had problems with their phone. And that was as a direct result of the consultation between AIR, ourselves and the Older Persons Councils. At Age Friendly, we deliver communications training to local authority staff throughout the country. Library staff, we mentioned before, we've also trained, and staff answering the community call helplines. National service providers have also accessed our communications training. As part of the Age Friendly programme, we have offered business recognition training to small and large businesses throughout the country. They take part in an online training programme with us, and then they implement 3 simple low-cost or no-cost changes in their business to demonstrate that they are open and willing to welcome the older consumer on board. As part of the Age Friendly business recognition training, those businesses that take part receive an age-friendly charter which they can frame and display in their business, and age-friendly notices to place on the doors of their premises saying, "We are a recognised age-friendly business." And the return on investment is, of course, a potential increased custom from a very loyal, a very willing to shop and a very available to shop and growing demographic. We keep a directory of age-friendly businesses on agefriendlyireland.ie, and those businesses that have achieved their charters and put the simple changes in place will be listed there. Older people are, as we've said, are increasingly digitally literate, and they will actively seek out businesses that are prepared to support them. They are loyal, they'll come back to you again and again if you are catering for them. And this is the message we are getting across to businesses large and small all over Ireland. The Age Friendly Ireland newsletter goes out weekly, and it is full of information of interest to older people and indeed their families. Activities, events, safety, health, many different forms of information, a balance of both positive and factual information. All of our resources are available on agefriendlyireland.ie, and you'll find a wealth of information in there to help you with your own local programme. On a separate website, agefriendlyhomes.ie, a lot of information there for older people and their families who are beginning to look at how they could adapt a home to keep an older person in their own home for as long as possible. We all know that the older person who lives at home is happier and healthier for an awful lot longer. And as societies, this is the way we're moving. Also, healthy age-friendly homes programmes are running now in 9 local authority areas in Ireland. This is a pilot programme, very practical, where people approach the local authority with the needs of the adaptation of an older person's home. And throughout this pilot programme, so much information has been gathered and so much is being learned that will eventually be applied to all the local authority areas in Ireland. Finally, you can access information on numerous age-friendly initiatives via a searchable database. It provides you with fact sheets which will allow you easily replicate and scale up age-friendly initiatives in your own city, town or community. In the meantime, here's a short video highlighting some initiatives around the country developed to support older people.
COVID-19 has been a time of immense challenge, immense loss and immense grief for all of us, but it has also been a time of great innovation and great solidarity, where as a country, as individuals, as groups and as organisations, we came together in very innovative ways to make sure that no one person was left behind. This video gives a short snapshot of some of the examples of real innovation that happened in services around the country to support older people.
Now I've a daughter of my own.
COVID Care Concerts was an initiative dreamt up by Gerald Peregrine, and the idea was to bring high quality classical music to those most affected during the pandemic. It was funded by Creative Ireland and Age Friendly Ireland and ran right through to February 2022. I remember one particular concert where a lady who was visiting her mother in the nursing home approached us and asked if the musicians would sing a song for her mother who was extremely unwell and unable to attend the concert. So when the concert was over, the musicians, all four of them, approached her door, her window, and they performed directly to her and her family. And that was particularly special. And we were all in floods of tears.
As you will know, staying healthy as you get older is very important, and that was more pronounced in COVID than it ever was. And here in Sligo, we ran a virtual cooking programme with Eiling, which incorporated over 55 people cooking through Zoom. So it was very nutritious, quick, easy meals, and it was also about not having to go out and stockpile your cupboard with things you're never going to use again. It was about looking at what you have and using what you have to utilise a nutritious, healthy meal. And also cooking maybe for 2 days. But the big thing as well was that people actually were connected and could see each other. And I suppose the negative was you couldn't taste the food, but people would describe the smells, they would describe the flavour. Sometimes people might eat before the end of the programme, if you want to call it a programme. But it was very enjoyable and people gained a lot. And also they have sustained that and remained friends.
Lovely. Oh, wow.
In CL Blue Ireland, we deliver physical activity programmes to Ireland's older population, those living with physical or intellectual disabilities or chronic diseases. In 2020, we went from working with 6,500 people a week to 0 people as the COVID restrictions came into force. So on the 16th of March, we started delivering programmes online via Facebook and YouTube. And what we found was that it quickly built an online community of people who were joining our sessions at 11 a.m. and 2 p.m. every day. And throughout lockdown and throughout the cocooning period, it was giving people structure on their days. Physical activity for our older person helps people to maintain their strength, their agility, their aerobic endurance, which in turn slows down the ageing process and allows people to maintain their independence and in turn live at home for longer. There were over 800,000 views of our sessions online throughout the lockdown period. So for us moving forward, this will be an integral part of our programme.
We had a very successful Living Well programme face-to-face, and once COVID hit, we quickly realised that we had to convert this programme online. I would say about 50% of our vulnerable adults were not able to get online to get onto our programme, had no technology, no devices and no internet. The programme went online and we decided that we would have a device library for people who didn't have their own devices. We worked with Age Friendly Ireland on a very easy way on getting online to Zoom or WebEx, and then with the support of a device that had a built-in internet and had built-in easy to use features, there was 1 or 2 steps and you're in on a programme, made it very easy for people to get online. This woman had been bedbound for 6 months at this stage due to her illness and was out walking around the front garden because she had the device to be able to get up on a programme that would help her progress with her condition and be able to have a good quality of life and more confidence. And without that device, that woman would still be in bed, would still be very much bedbound because she would never have been able to attend a face-to-face programme.
We were looking at ways to engage older people and people that were cocooning. And one of the ways that we did that in Kildare County Council was to ask people to take one of these notebooks. It was being delivered to their home, to take this notebook and to write down or record their experiences of COVID-19. And our aim for this project was that we would create an archive for the county. So there will be a digital archive of these notebooks for years to come. There's holy medals and newspaper cuttings and receipts, all sorts of things that tell something about a certain time. And I think a notebook is very precious, and it's something, almost an heirloom, a live heirloom, I suppose. So I think there's lots of scope for this to be adapted by lots of different groups all around the country.
As you can see, a fantastic array of initiatives that have been rolled out in partnership with the HSE for older people throughout the pandemic and post-pandemic. Age Friendly Ireland are delighted to be working on this partnership with the HSE, as we have done over the last decade, but particularly on this piece of work, where we have produced a fantastic online repository on the Age Friendly Ireland website, where you can look up and hear more about all these fantastic initiatives and the models that worked, and also a legacy document that we're producing, which is capturing those. But what is important now as we move forward is that we harness those relationships and those projects that have been led out across all the sectors, and that we really look at the meaningful impact they have had and progress them as we move forward. We are delighted that this piece of work has progressed.
Weren't those initiatives marvellous? And we've lots more in the pipeline. Indeed, all the resources I've shared with you today will allow you to delve into many, many other initiatives, and hopefully you will find something that will speak to you and you will be able to implement in your own area. Thank you.
Thank you, Orla. What a fabulous overview of nearly everything that's happening across age-friendly communications within the shared service, bar a few. I think it's really great to be able to share with our international delegates the kind of work that is having huge traction and producing outputs for older people. And I'm delighted, Sylvia, that you'll be able to maybe tease out a few of those. I can see through Slido we have questions coming in about the specific initiatives, so we'll tease those out. So our final presentation today is from our speaker, Louise Edmonds. Louise is the Regional Programme Manager for Age Friendly Ireland in the East, covering the local authority-led programme areas of Fingal, South Dublin, Dún Laoghaire, Rathdown, Louth and Meath. And Louise leads out thematically on, I suppose, the field of ICT, telecommunications, telehealth, telecare and all those areas, and is really helping us to, I suppose, harness what we've learned in the last 2 years and make sure that we're getting those messages to older people so they can avail of them. So I'm delighted today that this will focus on the digital communications and all those elements of technology. Thank you, Louise.
Hello, my name is Louise Edmonds, and today I will talk to you about telehealth and telecare, and how, through the use of technology in our lives, it can assist us to live more independently in our homes, feeling safe and secure, in the knowledge that if we need assistance, it is there for us at the click of a button. Across the world, the COVID-19 pandemic has encouraged us to look at staying connected through a number of various ways, to ensure communication is available for everyone, and how, through the use of technology, people were able to attend classes on Zoom or see their families' faces from across the world when we were restricted from travelling abroad. Technological devices were a blessing for people to lessen the feeling of loneliness and isolation, and also to assist in the delivery of assistance from our healthcare professionals. The Age Friendly Ireland programme works across all 8 themes, and today we will discuss how, through the use of communication and information, we can include and inform people from all around the world, how we can use technology through telehealth and telecare initiatives. First, let's clarify some of the words we will be hearing during my presentation. What do we mean by technology? Technology is an enabler. It encompasses a breadth of tools that, when used in the right way, can help improve our quality of life, keep us independent, healthy, fit and well. This can come in many forms, and it can mean anything from devices and apps to modern smart appliances, internet communications and connected homes. However, when considering the housing and care needs of our ageing population, we want to be clear that in all cases we need to think about the right solution first, rather than thinking digital first. Technology doesn't solve all our problems, But when used in the right settings and with the right training and understanding, all members of society can have better use of technology to address our needs. Telecare is the continuous, automatic and remote monitoring of real-time emergencies and lifestyle changes over time in order to manage the risks associated with living independently. It is a service that brings health and social care directly to the person, supporting independence and well-being for mostly older people, but also lots of other groups. Access to help in an emergency 24 hours a day is one of the defining aspects of sheltered housing, and this service is now readily available to people in their own homes. The response given depends on the type of assistance required and can be from a relative, a key holder, rapid response team or the emergency services. Telecare has been proven to help a wide range of groups, including older people living at home with specific long-term conditions, notably dementia and COPD, older people faced with moving from home to residential, nursing home care, people at risk of falling at home or at risk of other household dangers, such as fire or flood, people requiring rehabilitation or intermediate care, services to enable them to return home successfully. People who are frequently visiting hospital and A&E departments, and people suffering from social exclusion as a result of fear of crime or social or health reasons. People of all ages, including lone workers, victims of crime, domestic abuse, racial abuse, even witness protection. Carers, both formal and informal. Telehealth is defined as the delivery and facilitation of health and health-related services, including medical care, provider and patient education, health information services, and self-care via telecommunications and digital communication technologies. Live video conferencing, mobile health apps, they store and forward electronic transmissions and remote patient monitoring, which we'll discuss later. These are all examples of technologies used in telehealth. Telehealth is the use of digital information and communication technologies, such as computers and mobile devices, to access healthcare services remotely and manage your healthcare. These may be technologies you use from home or that your doctors use to improve your support and health services. Let me give you some product examples. Some are fall detections for activity or inactivity, temperature controls, door sensors. Appliances can be used for your kettles, your toasters, your fridge. These can all be voice activated through your apps. You have carer apps for epilepsies. We have sensors, mobile epilepsy sensors for non-nocturnal seizures. We have medication dispensers, alerts for when residents have to remember to take their medication. We have carbon monoxide detections, flood detections and smoke detections. These are all parts of devices that we have in our homes. On this slide, you will see how we define our baseline. By knowing our client, having plans to go ahead, what we do is we engage, we commit, and over the last 2 years, we have engaged with a number of companies and discovered the huge amount of devices that are available across our country here. From Tunsil Technologies to Cruthers, the Eli Connect, Wrist Assured, Always With You, Halo Care, and many, many more. They develop and test and evaluate all these products, and these companies are now developing the technology to meet the growing needs of our ageing population. Our work is to inform people and to implement and scale up where and when possible, to embed good practice and ensure the voice of the older person is heard in the development of any of these initiatives that we can. A telehealth pilot project was undertaken in County Wexford in 2021, overseen by a multi-agency stakeholder group, Age Friendly Ireland, integrated care programme in the HSE, Wexford General Hospital, including consultants, geriatricians, clinical nurse specialists, Tunsil Emergency Response, Wexford County Council, and Wexford County Council Age Friendly Programme, including our Older People's Council. This pilot was set out to provide a 12-week telehealth intervention to 50 patients with chronic illnesses. The project was independently evaluated by Waterford Institute of Technology by Dr. Suzanne Deneve. The objectives of the pilot project were to establish a proof of concept for the provision of a telehealth service for 3 identified chronic conditions: chronic heart failure, diabetes and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease in County Wexford, with a potential to scale up nationally. The research aimed to evaluate the pilot telehealth intervention, considering the impacts of the intervention on the patient's clinical condition and well-being, in-person use of health services, ascertaining patient and clinician perceptions of the intervention and technology, and an analysis of the cost effectiveness in this intervention. One of the recommendations was around telehealth needs, where they have to be integrated with telecare to offer a comprehensive solution which addresses patients' needs, specific needs, and enables both reactive and proactive approach to the management of the health and overall well-being. Telehealth can provide a safety net for persons with specific chronic conditions through frequent monitoring. Monitoring of chronic conditions' physiological parameters should result in the reduction of risk and potential harm through early identification and intervention. In the second recommendation, we found that alert systems exist to support the clinician in the provision of safe, efficient and timely interventions for the patients, whereby urgent issues are clearly identified and prioritised over non-urgent data. To utilise the technology to best effectiveness, clinical parameters set for the alerts should be patient and condition specific. This use by clinicians would improve the telehealth system efficiency and safety, as the alert system would enable the clinician to clearly identify urgent versus non-urgent clinical data. The research design used a mixed methods approach with a range of qualitative and quantitative data collection tools. Data was collected from patients using telehealth technology, and patients were asked to take part in semi-structured interviews at 3 stages during the 12-week intervention, prior to the intervention starting, during a 6-week midpoint, and within 2 weeks of completing the intervention. All patient interviews were conducted remotely via telephone due to COVID-19 public health measures that were in place at that time. Semi-structured interviews were also undertaken with referring clinicians, and for further information, you will be able to see the documents that are going to be attached here today. Remote patient monitoring involves the reporting, collection, transmission and evaluation of patient health data through electronic devices such as wearables, mobile devices, smartphone apps, internet-enabled computers. RPM technologies remind patients to weigh themselves and transmit the measurements to their physicians. Wearables and other electronic monitoring devices are being used to collect and transfer vital sign data, including blood pressure, cardiac stats, oxygen levels and respiratory rates. This project was developed to respond to the challenge of digital literacy among older people. 3 pilot sites were selected: Fingal, Meath and Limerick. The pilot was funded with dormant account funding, and 90 participants were involved in this pilot project. Cliff Run Media developed an age-friendly tablet and provided a managed service. Maynooth University evaluated this pilot project. This report indicated positive findings in relation to impact on loneliness, social interaction and access to services. More than 2/3 of participants would consider buying the Acorn if it was available in the shops, and over 3/4 would recommend the device to a friend. Usability of the device was rated as above average. The evaluation report was launched by Minister Michael Ring back in October 2019.
Well, I think I have to move with the times.
We wanted to build something that was designed specifically for folks that had no experience with technology.
We all recognised the need for something, just didn't know what it was.
It was a challenge that required a fundamental rethink of design for an older person.
Philip came with a product that he had brought to a certain point, but he knew he had to engage with older people, get them to trial it, get them to play with it, find the faults, find what worked and what didn't work.
Once they understood their role, it was partly to road test the new product and to give feedback and input on that. They really changed and grew into that role, and you could see that by, I'd say, session 3 or 4 even, you know.
The seniors gave them a tough run, but they constantly are asking questions because they know the need for information.
It got them sitting together, talking together and working together and building friendships, which was hugely beneficial to everybody.
the actual little course was great, that it brought us together, and many people were beginners, others were more advanced, but the mix maybe was good too, and one helped another.
See, from the very first day they started to the last day that we had them, I met them last week, they were so much more confident to be able to do things for themselves.
This project underpins all the objectives of our national age-friendly strategy. I suppose when you create a network of connected older people, you create communities where older people remain involved and remain connected with their community.
This has been a linking in between public and private partnerships, and I know personally that the growth and development for the seniors, which is my priority, is definitely happening. You know, you can see it on a daily basis. The fear has been taken away from using this new tablet.
I know I can do it, you know, I know. You know, there's no reason why. No reason why, because I still can think, and I can still talk, and I can still get up in the morning, you know.
Thank you for listening to me today. And if there's one thing you can take out of it, it is that there are digital technologies out there that can assist people to stay at home and stay safe and stay connected. If you can take that and use it to the best of your knowledge and share the information, communication is what's important here. And if people have the information about what's available out there to them and to their friends, well, then we are doing a good job. So let's share the information. Let's take away the fear of the use of technological devices and move forward into this new era. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Louise. That was another fabulous presentation. So much information about what's available. And I suppose that's the key part of this webinar today, is the range of pieces of information, and as Orla said, how it's communicated and the media that's used for that. So an awful lot of information today, and I think out of all of the thematic areas, it's one of the ones that's going to be really, really important. So we've had an array of questions coming in, some repeated questions and a couple about the grants and different things, so we'll go into, but I want to start with yourself, Anna, if that's okay. So again, as I said, building on people saying thank you for everything An Post has done. A couple of people have come in around financial services, and we have seen, I suppose, downgrading of some of the banks, some closures of banks, and even we've had to sort of close back on some of the post offices, rural post offices. But we know from older people that post offices remain the heart of the community, and a lot of people still like to traditionally post letters, collect their pensions, whatever the case, and there's such an array of services available. So more recently we've been doing some consultation with Ulster Bank about their closures and supporting older people to transition, but not just naming them exclusively with banking and financial services. What are the opportunities there with An Post, because there's such a level of trust there among older people with the postal service, particularly in terms of other financial services for older people? Or maybe what are the next steps for An Post?
Well, certainly, you know, in recent years we have revitalised the post office network completely. And while that has meant some closures, it has also meant that we've been able to reinforce and ensure that post offices are sustainable within communities. So we have pledged that everybody will be in a rural area within 15 kilometres of a post office, and within 3 kilometres of a post office in urban areas. Now there are the islands, for example, and particular isolated areas that are you know, that we probably have more post offices than we need, but it's important to support those communities. And we're absolutely, you know, we've made that pledge, but it is important that the whole network is sustainable. And that it means developing new services, being ahead of the customer in what they want. What's been, as a lot of financial institutions have moved off the main street and shut down branches, we've expanded our services. So we're now offering banking services for Ulster Bank customers, for AIB customers and Bank of Ireland customers in every post office around the country. And more customers have come on board in the last number of years, and we're really pleased about that. And one important thing to say that in a number of cases where there were bank branch closures locally, many of those branches were only open maybe a couple of mornings a week.
That's right.
Or a couple of days a week, whereas now they have the post office to do their lodgements and their withdrawals of cash, and they're open 6 days a week, 5 days, Monday to Friday and Saturday mornings. So those customers are really delighted with that service. We've also taken on the likes of travel money and travel cash on cards and actual foreign banknotes, which a lot of the other banks have moved away from. And that's an area that's really important as well for communities. And also then, as you know, as banks are moving out of the Irish market, the Unpost current account within the whole suite of money products is really competitive and a really simple, clear, transparent account with lots of additional features as well. We don't do checkbooks, we don't do overdrafts, but it's got so many different features, including helping people to budget, including pocket money with a card function for younger people. That's also, it's very popular with grandparents, you know, involving grandchildren in that and getting some pocket money in return for chores and the like. And also we have our Green Hub, which is all around green loans for retrofitting, for making your houses more efficient and more comfortable and draft free, depending on the budget that you have, or indeed if you want to borrow money. And we will also offer a one-stop shop solution for people as well, where we will look after looking after all the grant applications and seeing that through as part of an overall job from beginning to end. Again, tailored to your very own needs. Could be something as simple as having the attic insulated, or it could involve you know, heat pumps and windows and all kinds of other things. But again, it depends on the individual. So what we'd say, we're open for business. We'd love to do more government services, and we're in touch all the time with government around, you know, doing more. You know, we're such a trusted network. We've 920 branches around the country, so we're by far the largest retail network. And we're open for business, and we would love to do more for the state. And not just offline, but as part of that sort of hybrid between physical and digital services, because our services and our postmasters consistently and constantly, they prove their worth and their dedication, whether it's during, you know, dreadful phases of weather when a lot of other institutions shut down. We keep the doors open, as we did throughout the pandemic, throughout the beast from the east a few years ago. And they have a knowledge and, you know, a concern for their local customers and a confidentiality as well that is proven time and time again. So, you know, we're there, we're open, we've plenty more in the pipeline, and we do understand people's needs, and we can see it through. We're also a very strong digital force now, and increasingly so. So it's really interesting here today to hear about, you know, telecare and that advance of digitalisation and technology to make everybody's lives better. We're very much part of that. And come in and talk to us, or you know, check us out online. You know, there's plenty there. Don't be worried about your you know, your banking changes. Talk to your local post office, or as I said, speak to us online. All the detail is there at onpost.com.
That's great, Anna, and there's quite a lot of information there. I'll come back to you maybe on one or two of the points, particularly the piece about the hand-holding through the energy grants, because that's significantly important, can sometimes mean the difference between somebody actually going ahead with something and not. That's what we've heard from older people, because that guidance is really, really important. So I'll come back to that. Just, Sylvia, a couple of questions coming in about Orla's presentation. And there was, you know, a really good comments there on the stereotyping and making sure we're getting the right narrative. But one of the things that was specifically asked about was the Digital Ambassadors Programme through the Libraries Network, as we know is a really successful programme. Maybe just give a little bit more detail on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, as we all know, I suppose in the last 2 years, digital advancement has been amazing, but also we needed to make sure that older people didn't get left behind, that they could join people in this new sort of digital life, if you like, and ensure that they could connect up. So we spoke to Libraries Ireland, the Libraries Development part, and a particular lady there, Maeve Hackade, and we spoke to her about how's the best way to get older people digitally connected, to make sure that they had the training they needed. So initially we thought, well, wouldn't it be best if we could get an older person to work with another older person, to buddy up and to deliver training, to help them get online. So some of our members of our Older People's Council said, love to get involved, we'd love to do something. We're all cocooning at the moment, so anything we can do to help. So we put together some training in partnership with Libraries Ireland, and we got some of the older people's trained up to go out and do that peer-to-peer support. While that was happening, some of the library staff themselves, obviously the libraries weren't open, so they said, can we get involved with this? We'd love to get involved as well. So how better to reach those hard-to-reach older people than through your library service? If you think about a lot of older people, they all have they love to go to the library. So during the pandemic, they obviously couldn't get out to the library. So the library staff said, can we deliver this training? So we trained up library staff on how to deliver this digital training. But the difficult part, I suppose, of the whole thing was that this training had to be delivered by phone, because a lot of people, they weren't already able to get onto Zoom. So the first step was get on the phone, and that's where our age-friendly communications came in, because we were able to run that training, give the training to the library staff to ensure that they knew how to, simple things like have patience, not to use acronyms, not to use buzzwords that older people wouldn't know. So we trained up about 150 library staff to go out and reach people in their communities and to help them get online. And a lot of older people, they got online, they were able to download books on the BorrowBox app, and it was fantastic. And a lot of these simple initiatives were accelerated during COVID, but they're things that worked. So we want to ensure that they're replicated and they continue on. So there's no reason why. The libraries are a fantastic hub, and as you mentioned yourself, Catherine, earlier, they're going to be some of them are going to be the broadband connection hubs. So why not have people go in, older people have the opportunity to go into their libraries and to get that training, to help them to get in line, because God knows if we're in a lockdown, I hate to say it, but if that situation...
Or any emergency situation.
Anything, exactly, that older people will be ready, they're keeping up, and they're able to get online. So a fantastic initiative.
And I think what was really great about it was as well, because they were based in libraries, older people were able to take the tablet home with them, or the device home with them, or the laptop. That's why that age-friendly tablet was a really, really successful one, and could then learn at home and have their broadband at home. So there was a lot of huge outputs for that, you know what I mean? And I think it's really important that people know they can get in touch with their library and that they can avail of that. Probably worth to acknowledge as well that one of the key contributors to that was Age Action and their guides that they had delivered. And those guides, I know myself, were a huge resource to people, whether they were printed or... But if somebody hadn't got online, they couldn't download them. So the printed copies that were sent out through the community call even and circulated were really good. And they're still readily available. Simple how-to guides, you know what I mean? Because I think even post-pandemic, we have to realise that, some people are still using very traditional methods. The posting the letter, the getting the newspaper, and they're doing the traditional phone call. But I think the digital ambassadors covers all of that. And as we know, it's going to be scaled up and continued and sustained, which is fantastic. Louise, a lot of questions coming in around grants, and actually another, Anna, just in terms of loans and stuff like that, I'll tie it into that. But for telecare devices and telehealth devices, are there grants? So my understanding is there is a grant available for basic telecare, Louise.
Absolutely, Catherine. There's a grant that's available to anybody across the country to get it. It's a smart alert. It's a device that you can get. It means that if you are at home and you were to have a fall, you can press the button on it, on your device, and help will come to you very quickly. Now, there is a cost of €68 a year after the first year for that, but that is something that's available to anybody over the age of 65. I also believe that there's going to be there are so many devices out there that are very, very cost effective. They're cheap enough for people to go out and purchase. So I would be encouraging people to find out what's out there and to look into it. I mean, it could be the cost of a cup of coffee a week to have security and peace of mind. It's as small as that in cost to be able to press a button or to do a press for help, and help will come to you. It's as simple as that. We should also remember that there is a website here with Age Friendly Ireland. It's the Age Friendly Healthy Homes website. And if you go online there, you'll be able to see all the different companies that are available, all the devices that are available, and see what's out there for people.
Fantastic. Yeah, and I think you're right, Louise, because that grant, and I know that grant, I think it's now called the Seniors Alert Scheme. If I remember, it's been around for about 20 years and covers the basic button and box. But there's a whole range of peripherals available, like that you were showing earlier, your fall detectors, your sensory alerts, wandering protectors, all of those bogus caller buttons. And whilst they're additional, people can buy them. I think the cost is quite small. The initial outlay is quite small. The monitoring, as you say, is £1 or €1.50 a week or something like that, or in or around that. But when you're talking about that for the protection and the 24-hour remote monitoring you get, it's really, really important. Telehealth, and I know you touched on it, there is a kind of regional phase 2 of that telehealth pilot going out. Again, it can be accessed privately, but certainly as part of an integrated care plan for older people, that's something that's a real area of one to watch, because we know it can be really, really fantastic for older people in terms of chronic disease management. So I'm keen to see the outputs of that one, Louise. I want to come back, Anna, just to yourself in terms of the sort of was a double question, again with the energy hubs and the loans, and just where can they get more information, but also is there loans for technology? And I think maybe if people, because the capital cost isn't huge, but again, Anna, that's something that if anybody wanted to get a loan, like any financial service, whether it's for a suite of telecare or something like that, that may be something that Unpus could look at, or, you know, if they're getting it through.
Certainly the Unpus money loans are available. And you know, there's some really good value in there as well. It depends on particular circumstances and the amount involved. And I know that, again, coming back to, we'll say, retrofitting and the home efficiency and energy efficiency, which is becoming more important by the day for us all. But, you know, working with SSE, we provide a service that we will look at every possible loan that you can avail of and advise you on that as well. And I know that SEAI, who provide a lot of these loans, are working all the time to make them a little easier to apply for and to get through the various, you know, layers of paperwork and application, which is important. But yeah, there's lots of information there online, or inquire at your local post office. What you can do is look, you know, to have somebody come out and do an assessment for you on your home and deal with you on a confidential one-to-one basis.
We're really excited about that, Anna, because we're rolling out the Healthy Age Friendly Homes programme, which we featured on one of these webinars. And as part of that collaboration with SEI, we're doing a number of BEAR assessments. And then people can sort of decide, well, what works do I need to have done? So now that they have somebody in the loans, they can sort of say, well, now how do I access the finance for it? Because like that, there's the warmer homes and there's different contributions. But what we've heard in some of the evidence is actually the savings on utility bills would nearly pay back a small loan that would, you know, so it makes, and it means that people can stay in their own homes, they can right size, and all the other benefits associated with making your home energy efficient.
And the government, you know, have pledged huge funding as well and support with that as well. So, and that's developing all the time, and the things are, I suppose, are lining up together, so there's more cohesion between all the various groups.
Never been more timely in the current climate, excuse the pun, in relation to rising fuel costs and everything else. So it's really, really important and really great that we have An Post, you know, to be able to back that as well. Anna, there's just a question coming in from one around, has there been a decrease in the number of children opening savings accounts, more from a research and interest, now that the move is for them to have their own digital accounts? Do we see, is the day of the post office book gone, is the question, I suppose?
They're still there, they're still doing well, but I suppose it's not as simple as it once was because of anti-money laundering legislation, which applies very strictly to the post office and to the state savings products that we operate on behalf of the state, which includes the post office savings book. It applies to us as it does to any financial institution. So there's certainly more paperwork involved for everybody. But we're very conscious with our new MoneyMate account, which is for children and tied into pocket money and giving them an experience of money management. I think that's a real issue for younger people these days and for teenagers, and I see it with my own children. This notion, particularly with online shopping, that money grows on trees. They know, you know, they're not as familiar with saving up and putting things into jars, physical ones. So our products do allow them, both MoneyMate for younger people and our current account, to have that experience of saving and seeing money build up, be it in a digital forum. So I would say that we would be seeing less of those traditional post office bank accounts being opened, but there's certainly an increase on the other side. And that's a question of moving with the times. Absolutely. But the need to save and to understand the value of money, I would say, is more important than ever.
Absolutely.
Because, you know, credit can be so easy, and there is such now a culture of instant gratification. You know, whether it's binging on box sets or whatever it might be at your fingertips, the importance of that regular saving and just understanding the, you know, money and the cost and the prices of things is really important.
I think that's really important, and probably one of the takeaway messages from today, because that lifestyle planning piece, whether it's in a digital format, you know, how you're saving in the jars, you're putting so much, but this thing about anticipation has nearly gone. You can watch 6 sets or 6 series. You don't have to wait from Sunday to Sunday and get excited about watching a programme because everything's on demand. And I think that's really, really important in terms of real-time information and how everything's at our fingertips in terms of how we move forward. I'm not sure that it's a good thing, and I think it leaves us less likely to plan. So using more traditional methods, whether it's online, through this, and I certainly am going to be available of that, and I'm encouraging my children to save through the An Post, because I actually wasn't aware of that until today. And I know my own mother is always looking about what she can set up for the grandchildren, whether it's small, and it can be only small, but it gives them something to help them do that lifestyle planning piece. So I'm very, very keen to hear about that.
And you know, there's handy things you can do that if you're buying, we'll say, a cup of coffee or something small, you can round it up and have the change from a certain amount go into a savings pot, and that can kind of build. It's a little bit less painless perhaps, but it's building all of the time. So and some of those facilities, you know, will certainly appeal to different age groups, and is giving them some experience of that.
It's the virtual piggy bank, Anna, putting the 2p's and the 5p's in and being able to take it to the shop and get it changed into notes.
And having it just a little bit out of reach. So it's not there if you're going to be tempted with something online or spending it all in one go. It's just that little bit, you know, out of reach, so that you can put it away and aim for something and reach that goal.
Absolutely.
Which, no matter what era you live in, in 1,000
important.
years, we hope it'll be as important as it ever was.
Gives you something to look forward to. A little bit of excitement and anticipation.
And anticipation,
Absolutely. Sylvia, I just was checking again, a couple of questions on the stereotype and the ageism. Orla really touched well on it. And I suppose she has met with IAPI and is doing a lot of work with media to make sure that we're changing that narrative, which can only be a positive thing. So what other things have we done just to augment that and support that?
Sure, absolutely. And this is something that I would be really passionate about. And I think Orla shares it as well. What we wanted to, I suppose, build was a movement, towards portraying the older person as they are, really, and not this stereotype of, as we heard in the video, the Nora Batty socks or the frail hands on the lap and the slippers. There's nothing more annoying, or and especially to older people, because the advertising industry, has a tendency to put people in their boxes. So, we know what the child wants, we know what the teenager wants, we know what the 20-something wants, the 40. You get to 60 and it's 60 upwards, you all want the same thing. You're all in this one little sort of box, if you like. So what we wanted to do is to inform the advertising media. As you said, we did some workshops with them, and I think, to be quite honest with you, they were quite surprised when we told them how older people felt, and we showed them some examples of how older people are being portrayed by the media, by the advertising industry. And they sort of sat back and said, well, look, we're going to change. And 100% said that they would change how they were going to advertise, and they would think twice. And more importantly, they would consult with older people. They wouldn't just, deliver these ads or whatever. So then it brought us around to thinking, what next? What would we do? So what we're developing now is a set of media guidelines around older people and how older people want to be portrayed. And we're going to work with the NGOs in this sector. We're not just going to go alone. It's so important because everybody, again, it's this movement. Everybody is thinking the same way, and we need to change, especially in the last, again, we go back to the last 2 years, vulnerable. Our own chairperson, Kitty, so eloquently put it that, and Orla said it there, vulnerable, last 4 letters, able. Older people are very able, and they don't want to be, although they need, everybody needed to be looked after. Everybody needed to be careful during COVID. But they, older people are telling us, okay, so we want to be able to be seen as a more positive, not so frail. There are times when we're all frail, we're all sick. So it's about looking at the older person, consulting with them, and ensuring that anything that we develop and guidelines that we do in consultation with our older people and the NGOs in that sector.
Absolutely. And I think it's not even to labour the point, but absolutely what we would hear from our national network is there are plenty of times in our life, whether we're younger or older, that we have, we need help and we need support. But that doesn't mean that we have to sacrifice our independence or our dignity. And I think that's where the connotations are. So that's, it can only, changing it to a positive narrative is really important. So Louise, just coming to the end now, I think it's, again, queries again, grants. And I think one sort of key place that you could direct people to get the information on all the technologies, would that be the Age Friendly Homes website?
The Age Friendly Homes website is the place to go to. We have updated information there on all the companies that are available. Plus, if you can get grants that are going to be coming up now, that's the place to go. So please log on and have a look.
Absolutely, and there's a blog, and anybody can get in touch with our office. And I think that Age Friendly Homes website, to reiterate, is a project between the Department of Housing, Department of Health, ourselves, and the Housing Agency, and it's been hugely successful. with the amount of visits. So having that technology section on it is really important. And I know, Louise, you're leading out on our National Older People's Convention that we're going to do a slot in technology. Yes. So thank you very much for all that information today.
Absolutely.
Anna, just in terms of wrapping up, and you covered a huge amount today, all the different loans and services, the Logon Learn, the grandparents, the children, all of those different things. So some things are coming through. Where can I find out about this? Where can I find out about that? Where would you send? What's the one-stop shop for older people to visit? The website, the standard website?
Yes, onpus.com is really the fountain of all knowledge. But in as well, our every local post office has a wealth of information, of course, and local advice as well. You know, I'd have to say as well, you know, we're really proud that you know, our workforce in general is a mature workforce. That's right. Yeah. Our average age in OnPost, because people come to our company and stick with it and make a career there, that when you look across our, you know, our operational side, deliveries, post offices, headquarters and our sorting centres, while we're becoming a lot more gender balanced, thankfully, and a lot more multicultural, thankfully, you know, we do have, you know, people who are at the, like myself, at the mature end of their career, and we're very proud of that. And increasingly, you know, we start initiatives from the ground up so that we're getting those. We're very conscious of how valuable that experience is in everything. And it was some of our older, more mature staff on the front lines who led out with much of our pandemic response and had, you know, really good advice as to how to get it right, and also to encourage their colleagues and to bolster and reinforce the colleagues and keep morale up for everybody. So yeah, delighted to be part of this today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anna, and thank you for being here. And I think today's your presence here as well is about the collaboration, but also a celebration of what's been on in the last 2 years, the work of OnPost, and I think that's fantastic. I also think it's, when you're talking about the 920 branches, and as you know, we've been in discussions about age friendliness and then becoming age friendly, but even as an employer, you've hit the nail on the head, because when people join OnPost, there's a legacy there, there's a sustainability, and you know, people stay there. I think one of our vice chair of our National Network of Older People's Councils, Kevin Malloy, he'd spent over 40 years with the P&T, as it was then. And so much so that when AIR did the consultation with older people, and when they set up that Care with AIR telephone line, one of the nicest things they did was they asked Kevin to be the voice of it. So when an older person rings it, they actually, and it's very limited in automation, because it's 2 clicks and you get to where you want, or 2 presses, but Kevin is that voice. And that's a wonderful, I suppose, reflection of the legacy that he felt and his loyalty to P&T for all the years that he was there. So somebody did actually put in a query about that telephone line. It's 1800 252 252. I think previously it was 1850, and those numbers are being looked at. So 1800 252 252, if I'm correct. Yeah. And of course we'll have everything up on the website. And as well as Anna said, you've got onpost.com, you've got your post offices. But we know a lot of people are on social media, so you can follow it on Twitter and all of those things as well, as we can with age-friendly homes as well. And Sylvia, just from yourself, our general website for Age Friendly Ireland.
Yeah, absolutely. agefriendlyireland.ie. There's a wealth of knowledge up there, and there's a section on initiatives, age-friendly initiatives that you can search, which is really good as well, and the agefriendlyhomes.ie website. Yeah, both fantastic resources. So thank you, everybody. Thank you to our colleagues in the WHO, to all our international delegates that have joined us from all the different countries, to all the team here in Age Friendly Ireland, who, without their help, there's a lot of hidden work goes on to organising an event like this, and we appreciate all their support. I'd like to thank all our speakers that are here today, and in particular Anna from OnPost, in celebration of the work that has gone on. But I'd like to give final thanks, obviously, to Barbara for coming in and opening and giving those remarks, and we're really looking forward to continued collaboration with Comreg. Thank you, everybody. I look forward to you joining us on webinar number 5, and we'll be circulating the link to this video so you can circulate it among anybody that couldn't attend remotely today. Many thanks all.